Hi, Justin. Who all's on here? Just you two. Great. Counting up. Hi, Katie. Let's see. By the way, thank y'all so much for the before everyone else gets on. Thanks for the chat on Tuesday. It was really informative, very helpful. I appreciate you going like, yeah, it's not a good topic. Oh, got someone else on. Who's on? I see 3 people. Let's see. What should we talk about? I don't even know. How do these things work? Do I just like ramble about different topics? There's 4 people on. Well, let some more people get on. We'll do that. Yes, ramble. We'll ramble. I'm good at rambling. Been a busy day over here today. Let me reply to my own thing here. We're live. All right. Let's see. Busy day. Several interviews today, which is great. And in both of those interviews, I talked about Parcel 3.0. So thank you for that, Justin. That's a very handy turn of phrase for me, at least. Are there any bets on what LaCroix I'm drinking? That's probably the most important thing why everyone is here, is to talk about that. I know that's. Hey, are y'all enjoying? This is my dining room. This is where I live. This is my house. This is the background for every one of my interviews. Yes, definitely flavored. I don't drink just regular water, bubbly water. I don't drink that. That's gross. This is my dining room. This is part of the reason why we bought this house, is because this is wallpaper. It's not a picture. It was it's wallpapered up there in our dining room. Friends of ours who have been, it's not grapefruit, right? And it's pamplemousse is how it's said in LaCroix world, Katie. Let's see. So friends of ours who are much more well-traveled than I am say that this is the Isle of Capri. I don't really know. The 60s were a silly time. This house was built in 69. And so people had very different furnishings in their house than now, but we love it. This is the only of all of the walls that I personally painted in my house when we bought the house. This is the one wall that has never been affected by paint, literally ever. Everything else has been painted, typically by me. Yeah, so welcome to the first live stream. We're going to celebrate having 1,000 crazy human beings, 1,012 human beings that like talking about logistics and low budget logistics. I filmed a short. I have not actually made it. Like, I need to do the editing. Hey, Macon, filmed a short, need to actually post the short today. This is another 100% true instance of a thing that has actually happened to me in my real life that is hilarious and so absurd, beyond the pale, that like people need to know about it. I have been thinking about this thing for literally years. I hope everyone liked the last one that I put up. That again is another 100% true thing. I was just on an interview. We were talking about the silliness of delivery, and and yeah, like the person was saying, oh yeah, we've had someone, a gig delivery driver who walked up and flipped off the camera before driving through someone's yard. It's like, yep, that's a thing that happens when you get a gig delivery driver. So yeah, what a fun time. Porch piracy. It's a great question. So Justin, thank you for asking that great question. Porch piracy is a huge problem. And until Americans, at least, get more used to delivering stuff to a locker, there's not a great way to keep that from happening. I know that Amazon has tried saying like, oh, let me deliver it into your garage. I don't like that idea. I think that's a terrible idea. I don't want Jeff Bezos having any more room in my house than he already has. I don't have a Amazon, whatever the thing is. So as long as people are going to be delivering stuff to a house, that's going to be a problem. I know that Walmart has like in-home delivery of groceries, which is also equally weird to me. So I think there's going to have to be a change, a paradigm shift in the consumer to allow a different type of delivery experience, either becoming way more comfortable with people they maybe shouldn't, especially gig delivery people. But again, we used to tell everyone like, hey, don't get into a car with a stranger that you don't know. And now Uber's a thing and like Airbnb is a thing. So I don't know. I think some sort of paradigm shift will have to occur before you can really nix out porch piracy. Well, Macon, you can't. It's so easy to walk up to someone's house and steal stuff off of their porch that like law enforcement's not going to do anything about. Like it's not a. What do you mean by changing the paradigm of enforcement of laws? Do tell. Also, thank you for commenting. But yeah, other than that, I think that Americans especially need to get more used to the idea of delivering to lockers. Locker delivery in Europe and Canada, especially in Canada, is way more prevalent. And I know that the carriers, at least in 2017, 2018, were trying to open up more access points or lockers. UPS was really driving towards access points, but they never really caught on. I think that a lot of shippers were not necessarily willing to incentivize customers to do that, right? And changing behavior always involves some sort of incentivizing someone to do something. So, the benefits that a shipper might reap from having a commercial delivery rather than a residential delivery need to flow down to the end customer before they start getting used to it. And then on the other side, the carriers need to market better to that end customer to say like, hey, it's a better experience. Like just get your stuff. Like when you're getting groceries, just get your stuff there. That's what from what I understand, that's what happens in Canada and in the EU is like, it's just you expect to go out at some point in time in your day and you're going to get something. So like you kind of in stride, get your deliveries of your packages. So yeah, we'll see about that. It would take a lot of advertising, a lot of marketing to get customers really used to that sort of experience. But I think it's great, right? It's the reason why we have pharmacies in our grocery stores is that like you want to combine as many tasks together as possible. So yeah, lockers are interesting to me as a thing. Again, I wish that shippers would be more willing to pass that down to their customers, but so they're knowing about the rate of theft and zip code not allowing porch delivery there. Ooh, interesting. Interesting, Macon. So that reminds me of a time. So I was at another e-commerce retailer. We were delivering stuff to a customer. And what happened? they were fraudulent. They were saying like, "Oh, I didn't get delivery of this thing," and and we would go back and be like, "Oh, UPS actually takes like a GPS instance of where that delivery actually occurred," and so we can confirm that like it did get delivered to you. And at that point, we were really pretty hands off as a shipper, so there wasn't any kind of incentive for us to like say that. We did a lot of other things in those areas where we would, if there was a lot of instances of porch piracy, we would kind of notify the customer like, hey, you can't make a claim against this item because you've already either claimed it several times or otherwise. So those are definitely things that happen. But it's kind of hard to tell a customer at a zip code level, we don't ship to your area. You need to find a different address to ship to. That's kind of a hard sell. Let's see. Oh, I've gotten some stuff in the LinkedIn's. Is Bill on? Is Bill Schubert, you on here? I feel like you should be. This here is a sticker from my daughter. That was fun. Hello. Let's see what else is going on. AI in the supply chain. Great question. AI in the supply chain. I think every time that I've had a conversation about AI, there's always an instance where you have to divide artificial intelligence from machine learning. The two typically, they go together, but one leads into the other. And from the people who I really trust to talk about that, AI, the thing that denotes AI is that it is able to make a decision about something, whereas machine learning is only going to highlight whatever factor you put into it, whatever you're like telling it, hey, bring me back some information about something. So decisions are not being made. So I think that AI has a relatively limited scope and capacity in supply chain and logistics, specifically because most supply chain managers, people like me, would never want, or at least I would feel uncomfortable with something making a decision for me because it does not know all the variables that I may know or the experiences that I'm wanting my customers to have. That being said, I think that machine learning has a huge place in supply chain because there are simply too many factors that are important to someone who would make a decision that you would not be able to to control or to even monitor. So what I'm saying is like there's so many data streams, message instances that happen that can exist in an API from a carrier that are important that might take more time, that are generally suppressed when you drop a tracking number into a carrier's website. There's a lot of stuff that's suppressed. Machine learning can look at all of those things which are suppressed and say like, hey, when this happens, or the time lag between this message and that message indicates that there's a problem. I think it has the machine learning at least has the ability to like help you make decisions faster and maybe solve problems a little bit beforehand. I know my wife will frequently ask me like, hey, what's going on with this package? And she'll send me some tracking information. 9 times out of 10, I have no idea, despite having looked at literally thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of tracking numbers in my lifetime. Machine learning has the ability to make that answer a lot simpler, or at least highlight the problem much faster. And when you're doing high volume amounts of shipments, it's nice to have that. So I think that there's a lot of it there. I personally don't like machine learning and AI for contract negotiations. I think that's a bad thing. I think that contracts should be negotiated between human beings. I know that Walmart has been testing it. The feedback I've heard has been really mixed and typically pretty negative as far as that is concerned. Yeah, so let's see other things. What can we talk about? I'm just going to ramble. So not grapefruit, and unfortunately, I don't have Cran Raz here today for my LaCroix, despite absolutely smoking Nick Haywood on his own panel, on his own vote, which is probably my favorite thing that's happened this week, because Cran Raz is the best flavor. They did not have it at the store. They did, however, have the next best flavor, which is key lime. Labor concerns me better or worse than 20. Labor concerns how? Like union labor or supply chain like talent labor? Justin. I think as far as like unionized labor, people working in the warehouse. It's a great question. So I've spent some time working as a warehouse worker. It's not an easy job by any means of the word, and I think that at the lower skill level, workers have a lot more flexibility in what they can do. So the same worker who might be, picking orders, moving carts around, moving pallets, what have you, running inventory for $16, $17 an hour, which is a decent wage, can very easily walk into a Jimmy John's and wrap sandwiches, all day for the same amount of money. So I think that we saw this in 2019, 2020, where that lower skilled worker became very in demand and had a lot more pricing power. And so I think that there will have to be some amount of change in the overall labor force before things get potentially better. But I think that technology has a lot of ability to fill those gaps, and people are being a lot smarter about how they use technology, where they stash their inventory, how they hold inventory. I think that there's ways to kind of mitigate some of the problem, but at some point, right, you need a human being to pick an item and put it into a box. You got to have that. It is what it is. So I think the question of like how much of that do you need is always a question. How much do you truly need is a different question as well. I know that like I've had this conversation with Macon many a time about like what is the right amount of labor to do a job. That's always a question. I don't think that robots are going to be a thing until labor becomes much more expensive, which I don't think that it will for a while. But yeah, I think in the warehouse, for me, I think that warehouse workers need to see a path upward, and they need to see the ability to grow in a business and to succeed, right? Because there are some, right? I like to look at warehouse workers as I look at people in the restaurant industry. A lot of really talented chefs started as dishwashers, and they would openly say it, and that's kind of a badge of honor for them. I think the same thing should be true in the supply chain, where people start as thanks, Justin. I think that a lot of I think that workers need to see a path to those higher levels. I think, like for me at my level, having come into it after time in the Marine Corps at a bit of a higher level, I could see how like it feels like you're never going to get up to the upper echelons. And even at my level, to get into a director or VP slot, you typically need to have an MBA to really be accepted for those types of positions, or you need to have 15 or 20 years of experience doing that job. And so I think that's a problem. I think that, again, like without having to like jump through a bunch of hurdles, it's really difficult to rise in supply chain. I think that individual companies are really good about helping motivate their people. There's not always enough turnover at those higher ranks to allow inflows of lower ranks into them, but companies should always be incentivized to hire from within, to promote from within before we're looking externally. But I think that like that an entry level like warehouse worker is not necessarily well, trying to think of the right word. They are not really incentivized to stay and to grow because they just want, like, they want money, they want to move up, and I get that. That's a totally like normal thing. And so at that level, you're really competing on price, which is never a good thing to be competing on, right? Because you can go to Jimmy John's and get paid the same amount of money for easier work. Let's see, greenwashing supply chain. How can I identify who's genuine? Oh, great. This is one of my favorite topics that people don't like to talk about, is sustainability in the supply chain. It's hard. Greenwashing is difficult. You could have the best of intentions, but not understand all of the links in your supply chain, and that's a problem. I think that most companies who call themselves green only look at a very narrow portion of their supply chain, and they're not looking at the full breadth. And to really be green, really be sustainable in the supply chain, you need to look at everything from all the way from raw material creation, literally the ground, pulling materials out of the ground, all the way to the end consumer, and then even beyond. I think that Patagonia looks really well at that specific, like from customer to the end of an item's life cycle. They're really good about getting their stuff back, reusing those materials in different ways. I know that they use old clothes as the lining for their new like jackets and stuff. So I think they're really sustainable. They take a really hard look at how to be sustainable. Patagonia is very much the outlier in that. And so I think that a lot of companies will say, oh, we're sustainable. Our supply chain is, is offset, it is either offset or is carbon neutral. But they're not looking at the entirety of their supply chain. And that's always a problem for a lot of companies to understand, like, oh, my supply chain is even bigger than even I think about. I know that when I was at Kendra, there was a matter of like, oh, China is cracking down on I'm trying to think of the right word, the metal plating facilities. That's a very like caustic process. It's really like chemical heavy. It's super not green. And so they were shutting down a lot of factories that did it in favor of ones that were a lot more sustainable and were not as harmful to the environment. That caused some log jams because there were not enough people who could produce at the volume and scale that we needed to in that area of China. But like, there's certain processes that are just like, they're not good for the environment because we haven't figured out a better way to do that, right? Like strip mining nickel for a battery, sure, that's a good thing, but like that's a really harmful process. We just haven't figured out a better way of doing that yet. So I think that is it possible? Maybe. I don't know. It depends on how big of a look you're having at your supply chain. I've often thought about how to make a video about that, but it's very difficult. And one thing that's really interesting to me, kind of talking about the full breadth of the supply chain, is the EU year before last, the EU put some legislation out that would require suppliers to like confirm that they did not have any illegal labor in their supply chain. And I was like, man, that's hard. Having been to manufacturers, having been overseas and seen like those factories, like, yeah, we could say like, yeah, all this, like everyone's happy, everyone's getting well paid. No one is slave labor, what have you. No one is being manipulated or coerced into working for this company. But like, there were times and processes that didn't happen at that factory and they got shipped out to somewhere else. And there were times where like, we had raw material vendors that we didn't really necessarily know where they got their stuff from. We didn't know where the rocks specifically came from. And so there were times where it was like, there's some questionability within that area. And I think that no one has really said a whole lot about that legislation. No major changes have happened as a result of that. Most suppliers only look at their direct supply chain relationships. They don't look at the second and third and fourth, all the way like sixth or seventh, like down to the raw materials. Most companies don't do that. They don't look all the way down. And it's really hard to understand if someone has been coerced into working at a facility if you don't like speak the language or know that thing. So it's an interesting topic. I think that it will become more of a thing. Unfortunately, the plight of the Uyghurs was what brought all of this to light, and it has not kept in the news cycles because other things have happened that have precluded it. But I think that that's a very interesting topic that the world will at some point have to contend with, especially as we pull out of China and either nearshore. Felt bored. Still here. I just haven't. I haven't been making a whole bunch of long form content recently. I need to get back into doing it. I've been surprisingly busy. I've had a lot of interviews, which has been good. I've been more interested in making shorts and kind of getting more of the word out. But I will bring the felt board back. I thought this was a better. It's always a more fun backdrop, at least than the felt board. But it'll come back. But anyways, I think that there's a lot of interesting things in supply chain that are a lot of topics which are overlooked and need more light, more news scheduled on them. Let's see. Other things that might be interesting to talk about. UPS is really floundering, which is interesting to me. I thought it was really funny when the CEO was like, "Oh, we're going to drop a bunch of volume to focus on being profitable." That's tough. That's really tough. Like, hey, good for you. It worked out really well. The timing was fantastic. Post-pandemic was a great time for the parcel companies. But I will be interested to see what changes UPS makes in relation to the union contract and the rise of regional shippers. I think that they're taking the wrong stance. In my conversations with execs at both of the big national carriers, they have not seen regional carriers as a problem. They certainly look at their services as a service, not as a commodity. And I think that they don't understand that shippers view it almost entirely as a commodity. At least at some point, there's a large percent of the volume which I don't really care about, and I'm just trying to get like good prices on. And so I think that as more either gig workers become more of a thing or regional carriers become a thing, the commoditization of parcel will eat up a larger percent of the total volume here in the U.S. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. You haven't asked about Zipline yet. I have not spent enough time looking at Zipline, but it reminds me of a funny story that I didn't get to tell you, Justin, on the call earlier. So in addition to delivering water to one, so kind of back up, Zipline is a company which was made known to me that does deliveries via drone, which is really interesting. That it reminded me of a thing that we were doing in Afghanistan when I was there. We would deliver water to a really remote outpost because our trucks would constantly get stuck in the sand, and it was becoming a security problem for us. We stopped delivering via truck. We started delivering via a drone to them. It was a really large helicopter we delivered to. But one time we were exfiltrating a position. So we were breaking down a position. We were bringing stuff back, and there was a bunch of stuff that we were bringing back overnight across like 13 clicks, so 13 kilometers worth of desert between the two positions. And we were doing a lot of it by drone. And so we had in the military, they do a bunch of sling loading. So there's like a hook on the bottom of a helicopter, and you would put a sling on it, and you put a bunch of stuff, and like the helicopter would pick up, and you would move it. And so a friend of mine had some Marines that were out there, and they had 3 pallets worth of tourniquets. So like 13,000 tourniquets that they had, and the boxes that they were in were not like constructed well. And so there was a hole. And so they like slung load this load onto this drone helicopter. I hooked it up. The drone took off, and they like started to see like tourniquets just falling out of the sky. And they're like, that's probably not a problem. And so it took off with 13,000, and it landed with like 500 tourniquets because there were like breaks in the boxes. And so because of the amount of tourniquets that were lost, it required me to create an alert to the commanding general of the area to let him know, like, hey, we lost like $50,000 worth of gear over the course of this like 13-kilometer movement that happened overnight, and no one was watching, and it's the middle of the desert. So somewhere in Southern Helmand, Afghanistan, there is a line of tourniquets through the desert that someone might find at some point in time and go like, why is this here? So that's a fun, probably my most fun logistics story is that one. I will forever give my friend endless amounts of crap for that. His Marines. He was my roommate when we came back. It was a lot of fun. Let's see, other fun stories. There's no greater feeling of power, at least for me, in like Marine Corps logistics than like rolling up on a position and like moving an entire like battalion's worth of stuff is a lot of fun. And having another logistics officer go like, hey, how are you going to get all of our stuff? That doesn't look like you have enough trucks there. Like, nah, don't worry, I got it covered. That was a lot of fun. There was another fun instance where there was an up armored truck, super heavy truck that was stuck in a wadi. So it's like think of a big ditch and had water in it. It was like 6 foot worth of ditch. The truck rolled over and they couldn't get it back out. And so we got called and they said, hey, the battle space owners called us, and the infantry unit said, hey, we got this truck stuck. We can't get it out. We tried lifting it with a helicopter, but there's not a big enough helicopter to pick this item up. We're going to have to build a road to get to it, and we're going to have to dig it out. And on the phone with my counterpart, I was like, hey, man, like, how long have you been there working on this? And he's like, man, we've been working on this for like 36 to 48 hours. I'm like, okay, let me talk to my wreckers. We'll figure out a good plan for this. And so I was like, hey, we can certainly like give you the lift to move a bulldozer and build a road to this downed vehicle, but let's see if we can just pull it out of that wadi. So sure enough, like, we had a drone who was watching overhead and kind of circling the area and watching it, and it was watching, and then it turned, and so we were watching it, and our Marines like hook it up to the recovery, or to like the winches. And then the like camera turned, and by the time the camera came back, it was already like up and out of the ditch. And I was on the phone with my counterpart at the battalion, like, hey, we just pulled it out in like 5 minutes. Where do you want us to take this vehicle now for you? So that was a fun time. He was like, wait, everyone was saying that was going to take days. It's like, no, we got it out in a matter of minutes. Life's easy. We got you covered. No big deal. So that was fun. I don't get to do that kind of logistics anymore. I just deal with numbers and dim weights now, which has been interesting. Different kind of logistics. Let's see. Hey, we're down to 2 people. I must be boring, but whatever. This is fine. Everything's fine. Anyone have any fun Valentines? I hope everyone had a great Valentine's Day. Tomorrow is my wife's birthday, and she always likes to have king cake for her birthday. And I realized on Monday, like, oh, I can't get a king cake fresh on Friday because Fat Tuesday is Tuesday. That will be the last day that I can get one. So I have a king cake that's been wrapped in plastic wrap, trying to keep it sealed and fresh for her until her birthday. So that's been fun. That was my Valentine's fun joy. Bye, Katie. It's good to have you on. Let's see. What else can I talk about? The world of parcel. I like to tell people that UPS and FedEx are very interesting. You can tell the kind of service you're going to get with UPS and FedEx because UPS will always show up to a sales meeting in a suit. Always. I've never seen them not. Typically a suit and tie, but generally just it's just me and someone else here. Is that you, Justin, who's on? Anyway, so yeah, they're fun. They're fun joys. FedEx will always show up in khakis and a polo shirt. That's their uniform there now, which is fun. We may stop this at 30. I mean, it's just me and one other person. But I hope you enjoyed it. This is thanks for 1,000 subscribers. There's not 1,000 of you on right now, but it's been fun. Just rambling. Thanks, Macon. Bye. I'm gonna end it.